Thank you so much for having us, Mr. President.
Great to have you here.
You're announcing an initiative aimed to attack the lack of competition in industries that directly impact consumers, and you're starting out with the cable industry. What changes can consumers and companies expect to occur in the coming months as a result of this initiative?
Well, actually, the executive order applies to all agencies, and the basic notion is this: competition is good for consumers, and ultimately it's good for business. That's the way the free market works. The more competition we have, the more products, services, innovation takes place. And the sort of the cable or satellite box is just one example of an area where, because it's been tied to the provider and you rent it, and consumers spend billions of dollars on this every single year, there hasn't been much innovation. And so the FCC is looking independently of anything we do here at the White House at whether it makes sense to open that up to competition. You'll recall, or you won't because you're too young, but prior to 1982, phones worked the same way. You know, if you had a service provider, they rented you a phone. And as soon as we broke that connection between the phone and the service provider, suddenly all kinds of folks poured in and innovation occurred in the phone industry. So the potential here is for cheaper, more effective services that are provided, and this is just one example of what we can do all across the economy. The idea is that whether we're talking about financial services, whether we're talking about products like the box on your cable TV, across the board, if we have more players who can potentially participate, fewer barriers to entry, the rules aren't rigged, then you get more people trying to get your business and you get better products at cheaper prices.
As you mentioned, this is a broader effort, and you've cited reduced competition across industries, including transportation. Yeah. This is a tough stance on business, and it follows an anti-inversion merger push last week. What's your message to corporate America?
You know, I think the general theme is that American business is, the cornerstone of our economy. Our private sector thrives, and innovation is the hallmark of the United States. That's our big comparative advantage with other countries. But it starts to become less effective and reduces both what consumers get and the kind of innovation we generate if we get closed systems, or if people are gaming the system. And when it comes to inversions, essentially what was happening there was you had U.S. companies. Most of their business was here, most of their workforce was here, their headquarters were here, but they'd buy a small company somewhere else that had a really low tax rate, suggest somehow that they're now no longer a U.S. company, but they're an Irish company or a Dutch company, and that way they got out of paying U.S. taxes, even though they're benefiting from U.S. infrastructure, rule of law protections, et cetera. That's not fair. You and I can't do that, and we shouldn't allow corporations to do it either. With respect to these anti-competition concerns, as businesses get bigger, there's a natural tendency for them to want to get an exclusive market. What we want to do is to say, let's open things up. And if you are producing the best products and the best services, and you've invested a lot of capital, you're going to make a lot of money. If, on the other hand, you're just kind of sitting there living off the fact that the rules have set up where other people can't compete, that's not ultimately going to be good for you as a business, and it's not certainly going to be good for the U.S. economy.
One of the reasons behind reduced competition is more merger activity, as you talked about. Do you think that some of the approved mergers during your administration shouldn't have gone through?
You know, I don't weigh in on these things on a case-by-case basis. I think it's important for the experts who are charged with examining these issues, and the Justice Department and the Antitrust Division, which we've reinvigorated, to make these assessments. I do think that Americans generally, across the political spectrum, on the left and on the right, get worried if companies get so big and control such a big market share that they can set prices and keep people out from competing with them in ways that damage the economy or consumers overall. Just to be clear, the executive order I'm issuing challenges agencies to look for ways to promote additional competition to help consumers, But when it comes to antitrust enforcement, that's still the job of the Department of Justice as well as the Federal Trade Commission, and they will continue to carry out their jobs independent of anything that we do here at the White House.
Let's talk about how this fits in with the broader economy.
Yeah.
The economy has improved in the last 7 years
Right.
during your administration, yet 2/3 of Americans still think we're on the wrong track.
Yeah.
And Trump's message that the American dream is dead has resonated with a lot of Americans. Why do you think there's such a disconnect as we try to have this effort to level the playing field here?
Well, some people are still recovering from the trauma of what happened in 2007, 2008. We went through a really scary time. It was the fastest contraction that we've seen even before the Great Depression. And by some measures, the economy contracted faster so a steeper decline than you saw back in the late 20s, early 30s. The difference is we took some really smart steps to save the auto industry, to make sure the financial system didn't collapse, and now we've got an unemployment rate that is at 5%. We've created jobs for 6 straight years, but people still remember the uncertainty that came from their pension shrinking, their home values dropping precipitously, them losing a job. And so I think there's still an insecurity there. The other thing that's happened is we've seen a long-term trend where wages and incomes haven't gone up as fast as corporate profits, haven't gone up as quickly as people had been accustomed to in previous generations. There are a lot of reasons for that: global competition, technology, corporate practices have changed. In some cases, tax policies that I'd like to see changed, and I've tried to push Congress to change, have made a difference. But the fact of the matter is, it is indisputable that the economy is much better now than it was when I came into office. We're continuing to make progress, and my hope is that during this debate, we focus very practically on what are the additional steps we can take to make a difference. Why aren't we investing in infrastructure that would put people back to work and strengthen our competitiveness over the long term? Why aren't we investing more in things like early childhood education so that our education system is generating the workers who we're going to need for the jobs of the future? Those are steps that we can take right now. In the meantime, it's important for people to remember that our economy recovered faster and continues to do better than any other advanced economy around the world, and that's because we got some policy measures right.
These actions, though, might be construed as small bore relative to some broader issues, as you mentioned, like education. And why go after this now at this point, these issues, as opposed to some broader issues like healthcare and education?
Well, healthcare, as you know,
Right,
we've obviously made big pushes on. Infrastructure is an area where we at least were able to stabilize the budget and federal dollars that are flowing to states and local governments so that we can start rebuilding some of our roads and bridges and water systems. But we're still way short of what we need to. And in my current budget and last year's budget and the budget before that, I've called for a much more significant investment there.
Yeah.
It's not for lack of trying. I think that Congress has been stuck, partly for ideological reasons, in taking some common sense steps that would improve the economy and help working families. But I will tell you that consumer actions like this, or the actions that we took with respect to financial advisors, making sure that they have an obligation to the people they're advising to actually do what's best for their clients as opposed to the services that they may be peddling. Rules like that, they seem small bore initially because they don't get a lot of attention, but they can add up to billions of dollars out of the pockets of consumers. And at a time when people are, looking for any savings and any deals so that they can save for their kids' college education or their own retirement, if they're saving $100 a month on something, or they're getting a percentage point higher return on their retirement account, that makes a big difference in their lives.
So given all that, what should the next stage of economic policy look like? What's the most important thing that needs to be done to solve some of the issues that remain unresolved?
Right now, our biggest challenge actually is global weakness. The U.S. economy is moving reasonably well, and if other countries were doing pretty well, we would be doing even better. Because the weakness in our economy right now has to do with a strong dollar, because investors and folks all around the world are a little worried about what's happening elsewhere, so they rush to and buy dollar-based investments, and that drives our currency up. That in turn means that our exports are a little weaker, and the demand for our exports, which was high and helped us grow early as we were digging ourselves out of the recession, now have slowed. That's hurt manufacturing. But the big things that we can do long term, the things that are in our control, I mentioned one. We've got $2 trillion worth of deferred infrastructure repairs and modernizing our electric grid, our airports, our roads, our bridges. Those are jobs that can't be exported. Because interest rates are so low right now. It's a great time for us to engage in those big capital projects. That would be a big boost to our economy. Continuing to make progress on education, including making college more affordable, so that young people, when they get out of college, aren't so loaded up with debt that they have to defer starting a business or buying a home, but they actually can get moving quicker. Continuing to make progress in things like research and development investment, where we've lagged from where we were historically, and there's huge promising areas like what we call precision medicine, genetic medicine, and individualized medicine. If we're at the cutting edge on this stuff, we can create entire new industries. That can make a big difference. Tax reform remains another area. We should be closing a bunch of corporate tax loopholes. We saw in the Panama Papers a lot of work on tax avoidance, but one of the biggest problems we have is the legal ways in which people avoid paying taxes if they're powerful or rich enough. And in turn, you've got a lot of ordinary folks who are still paying higher rates than millionaires or billionaires. I think we should be able to get both Republicans and Democrats to agree in concept to have a more rational system, close loopholes, lower the rates. That would make our businesses more competitive. It would even the playing field between large and small businesses more. Those are the kinds of steps we should be taking, and I'm hopeful that those are the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about. I will say one other thing that I think you've seen somewhat mischaracterized during this presidential campaign, and that is the importance of smart trade. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement that we negotiated with 11 countries in the Asia-Pacific region. This is the largest market in the world. China is chomping at the bit to control what is going to be the most populous and ultimately probably most lucrative market in the world. And what we've done is negotiate an agreement to make sure U.S. businesses, U.S. workers are getting a fair shot at competition there. But unfortunately, because people have bad memories of past trade deals and offshoring and manufacturing declining and the impact it had on working families, there's a tendency to be knee-jerk against some of these trade agreements, and I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, I spoke with former economic advisor Larry Summers earlier this week, and he discussed a real fear of globalization. How do you convince Americans that a deal like the Trans-Pacific Partnership would be good for them? Well,
the good news is actually when you look at the polls, the majority of people still think trade is smart for America. If you've got a fair set of rules, folks can't compete with us. We got the best workers, the most innovative businesses. We'll do great in a free and fair trading regime. The problem is that some of the past trade deals, I think, weren't reciprocal. You had a situation where it was good for the other countries, not so good for the United States, and people have memories of that. The point that I've made is that whatever you thought about some of these past trade deals, look specifically what we're doing on this trade deal. We're actually having countries that are already exporting a lot to us open up their markets, reduce their tariffs, which are essentially taxes on American goods. We're making sure that they're raising their labor standards in unprecedented ways and their environmental standards in unprecedented ways. And the key thing for Americans to understand is somebody's going to write the trade rules in the future. it's either going to be us or it's going to be China. And if you're concerned and worried about whether China is going to outcompete us in the future, then you definitely should want to pass this trade legislation that establishes a fair and level playing field for us. China's not party to this deal, but all the countries that are surrounding China are party to this deal. And if they know that we are committed to trading with them and working with them, they'll rise to our standards. If we abandon these efforts, then what's going to happen is they're going to lower themselves down to China's standards. That will not be good for us.
Thank you so much for your time.
I enjoyed
really
it.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you.